Also developing tonight, in 1975, in the wealthy enclave of Bellhaven in Greenwich, Connecticut, a 15-year-old girl's body was found under a pine tree. She had been hit so hard with a golf club that it broke the club in half. The blunt end was used to stab her in the neck. Earlier that night, she had been at the Skakel house. The Kennedy cousins were known for running wild and having little adult supervision after the passing of their young mother. Martha had been in the garage, according to the story, with some kids listening to music like typical teenagers. And what happened next, only those who were there really know. Was she killed by the tutor, Ken Littleton, or one of the Skakel boys, Michael or Tommy? Michael spent 10 years in prison before his guilty verdict was overturned and then reinstated and then turned over again this past Friday. Joining me now with the family's reaction is Martha's brother, John Moxley. John, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
It's good to have you with us. You and your mother have stood up for your sister and what happened to her all these years and sat through all these trials. What went through your mind when this got overturned again against Michael Skakel on Friday?
Well, it's frustrating at best because we've, as you said, we've sat through, I can't even tell you how many trials, and we've been in front of the Connecticut State Supreme Court a few times. Mm-hmm. And every time they've ruled, in our favor, or they didn't buy into the arguments. And, I was at the trial every day, and this is the weakest argument, the habeas of ineffective counsel that they had. And, then the court, the members of the court changed. The judge that wrote the majority opinion retired. The judge, Palmer, that wrote the dissent, I think, waited. They were asked to reconsider. They just made a decision why they need to reconsider. But the reconstitution of the court changed everything.
Who do you believe killed Martha?
Michael. I'm absolutely convinced of it. I sat through the trial every day. I heard all the evidence. The only thing that I don't know that I suspect is that his brother Tommy and perhaps his cousin Jimmy Terrian know what happened. I don't think his younger brothers know what happened. I think they were innocent. And that's why they're standing by him today. But you never see any of his older siblings in the courts.
As you look back on this whole thing and you think about the involvement of the families, obviously this is a family that has a reputation for circling the wagons and protecting each other. How much of that came into play here to you?
Well, a lot of the family wasn't there. There was some staunch supporters, and it was their brother, their cousin. If you're not going to stand up for your family, who are you going to stand up for? But they certainly have a lot of practice.
So you believe that Tommy may have been involved?
Yes.
And what are you going to do now? What's your next step now that this has been overturned and nobody is supposed to be responsible for this?
Well, as I understand it, now that the court has reversed their decision and has made a decision, the state has the opportunity to look at the decision and see if there's room to maneuver. And I don't know what that is. I'm not an attorney, but it's the state's turn to look at that decision and decide whether or not to appeal or not.
How hard is it for you to put this to rest?
It'll never be to rest. It'll never be. It's just part of our life, and we go on with it on a day-to-day basis. We try to have a positive outlook. There's no hate in our hearts. That's just too heavy of a burden to bear. But, it's the life we know. It's, the roller coaster of all these decisions. And, it's amazing that since 2002, before 2002, all of the one-man grand jury, all of the preliminary trials, all of the investigation, all of the false leads, then everything led back to Michael. And then through his own deeds and his own words, he puts himself at the place at the time and explains why there'd be physical evidence there. We know they were lying from day one just because there was no report due, according to Tommy, on Abraham Lincoln.